Chapter 1: The Stay-at-Home Man. The early sunlight filtered through the pale curtains, casting a gentle glow on the tidy kitchen. The scent of blueberry pancakes lingered in the air, mixed with the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Ethan Morgan stood at the stove, flipping the last pancake onto a plate with practiced ease. He glanced at the clock. 7:12 a.m. "Lucas," he called softly, wiping his hands on the kitchen towel. "Breakfast is ready, bud." From upstairs came the light padding of small feet. Moments later, a tousled-haired boy of 8 appeared, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Morning, Dad," Lucas mumbled, climbing onto his usual stool at the island counter. "Morning, champ." Ethan slid the plate in front of him, pouring a glass of milk. "Big day at school today." "Field trip, remember?" Lucas's face lit up. "Right. The museum." Ethan smiled. These quiet mornings were his favorite part of the day, the calm before the storm, where it was just him and his son in their little world. He turned to check the time again. 7:24 a.m. Vanessa should have been down by now, as if on cue. The sound of high heels clicked against the stairs. Vanessa Morgan, pristine in a tailored navy suit and designer bag in hand, strode into the kitchen without a glance toward Ethan. "Vanessa." "Coffee's hot," Ethan offered, placing a mug on the counter. She didn't respond. Instead, she grabbed a protein bar from the pantry and turned to Lucas. "You're wearing that to the museum?" Lucas blinked, confused. "Yeah, why?" Vanessa sighed, her eyes narrowing at the hoodie and jeans. "You know what? Never mind. I'm late." With a whirl of her heels, she was out the door, phone already pressed to her ear, issuing orders. Ethan exhaled slowly, returning to his seat beside Lucas. "Is Mommy mad at me?" Lucas asked quietly, picking at his pancakes. "No, buddy. She's just busy." Lucas nodded, but his eyes fell to his plate. It hadn't always been like this. When Ethan and Vanessa first decided he would stay home, it was supposed to be temporary. A year. Maybe 2, just until Lucas's health stabilized. But that year turned into 3, then 5. Ethan had given up his career in instructional design to become the full-time caregiver Lucas needed. And he didn't regret a single moment, not the sleepless nights, not the hospital runs, not the isolation. But somewhere along the way, Vanessa had changed. Once proud of Ethan's devotion to their son, she now looked at him with quiet disdain. Every PTA meeting he attended alone, every lunch he packed, every science fair project he supervised, it only seemed to make her more distant. Her career soared as the CEO of V-Design Studio, one of the fastest-growing luxury fashion brands on the East Coast. Magazine covers, networking galas, international trips, she thrived in the spotlight. And in the shadow of that spotlight, Ethan faded. Later that afternoon, Ethan stood outside the museum entrance with a group of 4th-grade parents and chaperones. The children clustered excitedly around the entrance, pointing at the dinosaur skeletons through the glass. "Mr. Morgan, your son is such a sweetheart," said one of the moms. "Always so polite." "Thank you," Ethan replied with a warm smile. A few feet away, he overheard a conversation between 2 other mothers. "That's Vanessa Morgan's husband, right? The stay-at-home one." "Yes. Can you imagine? She runs that entire fashion empire, and he's just at home." Ethan pretended not to hear. He focused on Lucas, who was now tugging his hand, excited to see the exhibits. He didn't care about the gossip. Not really. But it chipped away at him. The idea that being a father, a full-time caregiver, a husband who put his family first, somehow made him less. That evening, Vanessa returned home late, again. Her hair was perfectly styled, lips still tinted with red lipstick, as if she had just stepped off a runway. Ethan had kept dinner warm. "You didn't have to wait," she said, hanging her coat with robotic efficiency. "I wanted to," he replied simply. Lucas wanted to tell you about the museum. I'm exhausted, she said, brushing past him into the dining room. He can tell me tomorrow. He waited up for you, Ethan said softly, then cried himself to sleep when you didn't come. For a moment, there was silence. Then she said, Ethan, I'm doing everything I can to keep this family afloat. Can you at least appreciate that? I do appreciate it, he said, voice tightening. But money isn't the only thing that keeps a family alive. She looked at him like he was speaking a different language. He almost told her about the rumors. About Dylan, her assistant, how she smiled differently around him. How Ethan had seen the late-night texts, the business trips that didn't align with any calendar entries. But he didn't. Not yet. That night, after the house went quiet, Ethan stood in Lucas's room, watching his son sleep, small chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. He knelt down and gently brushed the hair from Lucas's forehead. I've got you, buddy, he whispered. I've got you. And in that stillness, a thought began to take root in his mind. Not anger, not revenge. A resolution. He had spent the past 8 years being the man who stayed. But maybe it was time he rose. Chapter 2. Cold dinners and colder glances. Ethan stirred the butternut squash soup slowly, the creamy orange mixture swirling beneath the ladle. He had tried a new recipe, added nutmeg and roasted garlic, hoping it might lift the mood in the house. Lucas sat at the dining table, pencil in hand, working through math problems. His little brow furrowed in concentration. Need help with that last one? Ethan asked gently. I think I got it, Lucas murmured, then looked up. Are we eating with Mom tonight? Ethan paused. She said she'd be home by 7. Lucas looked at the clock. It was 7:42. The boy didn't say anything, but his face said enough. He began putting away his homework, packing it neatly into his folder. Ethan reached for 2 bowls. By 8:15, dinner had grown cold. Ethan reheated the soup while Lucas scrolled through pictures from his museum trip. They laughed together about how their tour guide got scared by a fake spider in the ancient Egypt exhibit. Mom would have screamed even louder. Lucas giggled. Ethan smiled but said nothing. There was a tightness in his chest he couldn't shake. Halfway through their meal, the front door opened. Vanessa entered, her heels clicking sharply on the hardwood, scarf billowing slightly from the cold air outside. She smelled faintly of wine and expensive perfume, a scent Ethan no longer recognized as hers alone. You already started dinner? She asked. Surprised. Ethan set his spoon down carefully. It's almost 9. She took off her coat with a huff. I had a meeting run late. The New York investor came into town unexpectedly. Lucas looked at her with hopeful eyes. Want to see my field trip pictures? Vanessa hesitated for a moment, then offered a tight smile. Maybe tomorrow, honey. I'm exhausted. Ethan watched Lucas's face fall as he slowly closed the tablet. The child didn't protest, didn't cry. He simply nodded and got up to take his bowl to the sink. It hurt more when they didn't cry. After putting Lucas to bed with a story and a soft kiss to the forehead, Ethan returned to the living room. Vanessa was on the couch, scrolling her phone, legs crossed with effortless elegance. He sat across from her, not speaking right away. The silence stretched between them like a drawn-out breath. Vanessa, he began. She didn't look up. I've been thinking, maybe we should see a counselor. That got her attention. She looked up sharply. A marriage counselor? Yes, she scoffed. What for? Ethan's voice remained steady. We barely speak. You miss dinner most nights. Lucas is starting to ask questions. I think we need help. Vanessa narrowed her eyes. I'm building an empire, Ethan. I don't have time to sit around and talk about my feelings in some overpriced office. You don't need to build it alone, he replied, keeping his voice calm. You have a family too. A son who needs you. I provide for this family, she snapped. You think these lights keep themselves on? You think that house, that car, that school just pay for themselves? Ethan stood, the weight of years of silence beginning to shake loose inside him. You don't see us, Vanessa. You see obligations. You see inconvenience. Don't you dare. I'm not blaming you, he said quickly. I'm asking you to care. She stared at him, then rolled her eyes. This again. The martyr speech. You chose to stay home, Ethan. I never forced you. I chose our son, Ethan said quietly. Because someone had to. The next day, Ethan drove Lucas to school in silence. The radio played low jazz in the background, but neither of them spoke until they reached the school gate. Lucas looked up at him before getting out of the car. Is Mom mad at you? Ethan shook his head and forced a smile. No. Grown-ups just have hard days sometimes. Lucas hesitated. I don't think she likes me very much. Ethan's heart cracked. Lucas, your mom loves you. She just shows it in ways that are hard to see sometimes. The boy nodded, unconvinced, and got out. Ethan watched him walk into the school until he disappeared behind the glass doors. That afternoon, Ethan dropped by the V-Design studio building to drop off Vanessa's forgotten laptop. It wasn't the first time she had left it at home, and he knew she had an important client presentation. He rode the elevator to the 14th floor. The office was sleek, full of glass and gold accents, the scent of orchids and toner ink blending in the air. Mr. Morgan, the receptionist said with surprise. Vanessa didn't mention you were coming. I'm just dropping this off, he said with a warm smile. She left it at home. Just as he turned to leave, he heard laughter. A familiar voice. Vanessa's. He followed the sound without thinking. There she was, sitting at a private table with Dylan, her young, sharply dressed assistant, leaning in close, their heads nearly touching. Dylan reached out and brushed something from her cheek. And she didn't pull away. Ethan stopped, stunned. They didn't see him. And even if they had, he wasn't sure it would have mattered. That night, Ethan didn't bring it up. He simply helped Lucas with homework, tucked him in, and stood again in the dark, watching his son sleep. He remembered Vanessa's laughter. The way she looked at Dylan, full of lightness and youth. A look she hadn't given Ethan in years. He couldn't stop the pain, but he could stop the silence. He sat down at the dining table, pulled out a sheet of paper, and began writing a plan. Not of revenge, but of resurrection. Chapter 3. The Invisible Man. The following morning arrived cloaked in a soft, gray drizzle. The windows in the kitchen were blurred with condensation, and the sky beyond looked tired. Ethan stood by the sink, cradling a mug of coffee that had long gone cold. He hadn't slept. Not really. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, Vanessa, laughing. Leaning in toward Dylan, her face brighter than it had been in years. But not for him. Never for him. He took a deep breath and turned to face the fridge, where Lucas's drawings were clipped with colorful magnets. One showed the three of them, Vanessa, Ethan, and Lucas holding hands. But the crayon version of Vanessa had no smile. He unclipped it quietly. That afternoon, Ethan found himself at the local library, seated with a laptop in front of him and a yellow notepad filled with scribbled ideas. It wasn't enough to be angry. He needed direction. A plan. He began to research educational tools, games, apps, lesson planners for parents of children with health issues. He searched forums, read studies, bookmarked resources. The more he dug, the more it made sense. There were thousands of parents like him, quietly struggling, forgotten by corporate solutions. He had the background. Years ago, he had worked as an instructional designer. He had developed training modules for healthcare professionals, school systems, even a startup that was later acquired. He had the skills, and now he had the fire. He would start something of his own. A project. A company. Something built on the belief that fathers mattered. That caregivers, even when unseen, could become powerful. He closed the laptop and stared out the rain-flecked window. This wouldn't be about Vanessa. This would be about legacy. Later that night, Vanessa burst through the front door in a flurry of perfume and rainwater. Her heels clacked against the tile as she kicked them off by the door, dropping her umbrella in a trail of droplets. "Did you pick up the dry cleaning?" she asked, barely glancing up. "No," Ethan said evenly. "I was at the library." She paused, caught off guard. "The library?" "I'm working on something." She arched a brow. "Is this about your little learning app idea again?" He nodded. "Yes, I'm going to build it." "I'm serious this time." Vanessa scoffed. "Ethan, you have no capital, no backing, no experience running a business. Do you even know how competitive that space is?" He stared at her, letting the silence answer for him. Her words weren't meant to discourage, they were meant to diminish. As they always had. "I'll find a way," he said calmly. Vanessa rolled her eyes. "I don't have time to babysit your pipe dreams. Just make sure Lucas eats vegetables and does his spelling." Then she disappeared into the bedroom. That weekend, Lucas had a soccer match. It was the kind of chilly Saturday morning where parents wrapped themselves in fleece blankets and held coffee like lifelines. Ethan stood at the edge of the field, cheering softly, clapping when Lucas made a pass or blocked a goal. Vanessa didn't show up. Again. After the game, Lucas came running, flushed and happy. "Did you see that, Dad? I stopped that big kid shot." Ethan grinned and ruffled his hair. "You were amazing." Lucas beamed. "Is Mom coming later?" Ethan crouched beside him. "Not today, bud. She's got work." Lucas nodded slowly, his lips tightening into a thin line. "She never comes." "I know," Ethan said gently. "Sometimes." Lucas hesitated, then looked down. "Sometimes I wish it was just you and me. That'd be okay." Ethan felt something crack inside him. Not pain, not grief. Permission. That night, as Lucas slept, Ethan returned to his research. But this time, it was more than planning. He filed paperwork for an LLC, BrightSeed Learning Solutions. He wrote a mission statement to empower caregivers through accessible, child-centered educational tools. He sketched logos on napkins. He emailed an old college friend who now worked in venture capital, asking for a coffee meeting. He wasn't just dreaming, he was moving. Meanwhile, Vanessa was out again. She had left around 8:30 p.m. With a vague excuse about networking. Ethan didn't ask questions. He didn't have to. At midnight, she returned. Quietly, carefully. She had learned to hide her footsteps, to silence the key as it turned. But Ethan wasn't asleep. He sat at the dining table, lights dim, laptop still open. Vanessa stopped in the hallway when she saw him. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked casually, removing her coat. "No," he said, eyes fixed on her face. "I was wondering if you were going to lie again. Or if you were going to finally tell me the truth." She froze. For the first time in years, her mask cracked. "I know about Dylan," Ethan said evenly. "I've known for a while." She opened her mouth to speak, but he raised a hand. "I don't want an explanation. And I don't want to fight." He stood up, walked past her, and paused at the bottom of the stairs. "I just want you to know," he said quietly, "I'm done pretending this is a marriage." And then he went upstairs, not in anger, but in clarity. For the first time in a long, long time, Ethan felt tall. Chapter 4. Through the Glass. Vanessa didn't sleep that night. She lay beside Ethan in silence, staring at the ceiling, but the distance between them was now a canyon, deep, silent, and uncrossable. His back was to her, his breathing steady, peaceful. It enraged her more than she expected. He wasn't supposed to be calm. He was supposed to beg, to fight, to care. But he was gone, not physically, not yet, but emotionally, spiritually, completely. And she felt it. In the morning, Ethan was already downstairs, making breakfast like he always did. The scent of cinnamon toast filled the air. Lucas was humming in the background, tapping a pencil on the counter while finishing his weekend worksheet. Vanessa stood at the top of the stairs, watching them unseen. She noticed the way Ethan smiled at Lucas, the way his eyes lit up when Lucas asked a question. It was not a performance. It was love. Honest, effortless love. She couldn't remember the last time Lucas looked at her like that. As she stepped into the kitchen, Ethan greeted her with a polite, "Good morning." "Morning," she replied, sitting down. "Smells good." Lucas beamed. "Dad added nutmeg today." "Nutmeg," Vanessa repeated. "Very festive." Ethan didn't respond. He served her a plate, then returned to making Lucas's lunchbox. She noticed a neat sticker on the sandwich wrapper. "You've got this, champ." She used to make little notes too. Once, a long time ago. The silence thickened. "So, about what you said last night," Vanessa began, trying to sound breezy. "You don't mean it." Ethan paused mid-slice, then resumed. "I do," he said simply. "You're going to throw this all away? Over what? One mistake?" Ethan turned to her. "It wasn't just one mistake, Vanessa. It's been years of loneliness, of dismissal, of raising our son alone while you chased whatever it is you're chasing." "I was building a future," she snapped. Ethan's voice stayed calm. "You were building your future, and there's no room for us in it." Later that day, Ethan drove to uptown Charlotte to meet Henry Lynn, an old friend from his grad school days, now a partner at a mid-tier venture capital firm. They met at a small cafe tucked between office buildings. The place smelled of roasted espresso and ambition. Henry greeted him with a firm hug. "Ethan Morgan. Haven't seen you since the wedding." "Yours, I think." Ethan chuckled. "Yeah, it's been a while." Henry sat, motioning to the barista. "So, what's this about an idea?" Ethan pulled out his tablet and opened a basic prototype. An educational app designed for children with chronic conditions, interactive lessons, breathing guides, games tailored to learning pace. "I want to help kids like Lucas. Kids who miss school for weeks. Parents who have to become part-time teachers." Henry leaned in, intrigued. "And you built this yourself?" "Every line of code." Henry whistled. "Impressive." "And the name?" "BrightSeed." "Nice. And what do you need?" "A small seed round. Just enough to hire one developer, one designer, and get a working MVP launched." Henry leaned back, considering. "You know what I like," he said. "You're not just solving a problem. You are the problem, the parent who needs this. You're the use case." "That's rare." He tapped his fingers thoughtfully. "All right. Send me a formal pitch deck. I'll see what I can do." Ethan left the cafe feeling lighter. Not euphoric. Not invincible. But possible. Back home, Vanessa was in her office on a Zoom call with Dylan. Ethan walked past the half-open door and heard Dylan's voice through the speakers. "So I reserved the suite in Miami. You just need to book the flight." Vanessa laughed, a laugh Ethan hadn't heard in years. He didn't stop. He didn't look back. He just closed Lucas's bedroom door and sat beside his son, listening to him ramble about a new school project. Vanessa could have Miami. He had this. That night, Ethan sent the pitch deck to Henry, finalized the paperwork for a business checking account, and emailed a young graphic designer he'd found on LinkedIn to start working on the app UI. Vanessa peeked over his shoulder. "You're serious about this?" "I told you I was." She folded her arms. "You're not going to make it. You think you can suddenly become a tech founder out of nowhere?" Ethan closed his laptop and looked at her, steady. "You used to believe in me." Vanessa's lips twitched. "People change." "They do," Ethan said. "And I have. I'm not here to be your placeholder anymore." He stood up. "And soon, I won't be here at all." Vanessa watched him walk upstairs again, calm, resolved, untouchable. And suddenly, she realized. The man she once thought was invisible had become someone she could no longer ignore. Chapter 5. The Day She Didn't Come Back. Ethan stood in the county clerk's office, the petition for dissolution of marriage folded neatly in his leather folder. It felt strangely anticlimactic. No storm, no screaming match, just silence and finality. Mr. Morgan, the clerk said, glancing over the paperwork. Everything's in order. We'll contact you once a court date is scheduled. Ethan nodded, thanked her, and walked out into the crisp Charlotte air. The trees lining the streets were dusted with autumn reds and oranges. For the first time in years, he noticed the color in them. At home, Vanessa wasn't there. Lucas sat on the floor of the living room, building a Lego model of a science lab. "Where's Mom?" he asked without looking up. Ethan paused. "She's out. She might be gone a few days." Lucas nodded, snapping another brick in place. "Is she with that guy?" Ethan blinked. "What makes you say that?" "I saw him once," Lucas said simply. "He picked her up when you were sleeping." Ethan knelt beside him. "Lucas, I know this is hard to understand, but Mom and I are going to live separately soon." Lucas didn't react right away. Then, quietly, he said, "Can I stay with you?" Ethan pulled him into a hug, kissing the top of his head. "Always." That weekend, Vanessa texted once. "In Miami for a business opportunity. We'll be back next week. Don't wait up." She didn't mention Lucas. Didn't ask. Ethan didn't reply. Instead, he worked. By Sunday night, he had finalized a working prototype of the BrightSeed app's first module, a breathing exercise game called Balloon Buddies, designed to help children with asthma like Lucas regulate anxiety and breath through guided play. Lucas was the first tester, and his delighted laugh when the screen filled with colorful animations was all the validation Ethan needed. "You built this, Dad?" "Yeah." "Cool," Lucas said. "Can I tell my friends?" Ethan smiled. "You better." Monday came. Then Tuesday. No Vanessa. Wednesday morning, Ethan got a call from a blocked number. He almost let it go to voicemail, but something told him to answer. "Ethan?" came Vanessa's voice, tight and trembling. He sat up straighter. "Where are you?" "I'm still in Miami," she said. "Something happened." "What do you mean?" There was a pause. "Dylan, he cleaned out the company account. All of it. He's gone." Ethan closed his eyes. Gone? He took everything. The brand files, the supplier lists, even client deposits. "I'm ruined." Another pause. Can you send me something? Just to get a flight back." The silence between them now was different, not tense, but distant. Like two islands slowly drifting apart. "I'm sorry, Vanessa," he said gently. "I really am. But no, I can't send you anything." She didn't reply. "I filed for divorce," he added, his voice calm. "You'll receive the notice soon." Still silence. "Lucas is safe," he said before hanging up. "And happy?" Click. That evening, Lucas drew a picture of Dad's app and taped it to the fridge. It showed two balloons smiling, floating above a cloud that looked suspiciously like their house. Ethan watched him color it in, a sense of warmth settling deep in his chest. This wasn't a revenge story. It wasn't a triumph over someone else. It was about choosing love over pride, presence over image. A week later, Vanessa returned to Charlotte. No one met her at the airport. Her company was under legal investigation. Clients had left. Her credit cards declined at the hotel. She took a cab to the house. She stood on the porch for a long time before ringing the doorbell. Lucas answered. The boy stared at her with the kind of stillness only children carry when something has shifted too far to fix. "Hey, baby," Vanessa said, kneeling. "I'm back." Lucas didn't hug her. Instead, he said softly, "Why didn't you come when I was sick?" Vanessa froze. "I needed you," he whispered. "And you didn't come." Before she could reply, Ethan stepped behind Lucas, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. Vanessa stood. I lost everything, Ethan." "I know," Ethan said. "So did I. A long time ago." He didn't slam the door. He simply closed it quietly. Finally, Chapter 6. The Letter She Never Read. Vanessa sat in the corner of a dingy extended-stay motel on the edge of Charlotte. The floral curtains were faded. The carpet smelled faintly of bleach and despair. Her designer suitcase sat on the floor, now just a hollow symbol of a world that no longer welcomed her. The woman who had once been on the cover of Southern Style magazine now wore a wrinkled t-shirt from a gas station rack. Her phone lay face down beside her, its silence louder than any argument. There had been no calls from her former clients, no calls from friends, and no call from Lucas. She had expected Ethan to falter, to struggle, to beg. Instead, he had flourished, and that was the part she hadn't prepared for. Meanwhile, across town, Ethan stood in a room filled with whiteboards, markers, and glowing laptop screens. BrightSeed was no longer a dream, it was a living, breathing thing. He now had 2 employees, Zoe, a UX designer with a heart for accessible learning, and Omar, a young coder who had been raised by a single dad and resonated deeply with Ethan's mission. They were working out of a co-working space downtown, not glamorous, but full of passion. Okay, Zoe said, pointing to a wireframe. What if we gamify medication tracking? Like, every time a kid takes their inhaler, it earns them tokens they can use to customize a character. Ethan lit up. Yes, and the character could evolve as their streak continues, like a health journey avatar. Lucas, sitting in the corner with his tablet, perked up. Can mine have a cape? Zoe grinned. Yours will have a cape and a jetpack. That evening, Ethan found himself sorting through an old drawer in the attic. He wasn't sure what he was looking for, maybe closure. Instead, he found a letter. It was a handwritten note, folded neatly in an envelope that had never been sealed. The date on the top was from 3 years ago. To Vanessa. I don't know how to say this out loud anymore, so I'm writing it instead. I miss us. I miss the way we used to talk. How we used to plan our future like it was something we were building with our hands together. These days, it feels like we're living in separate orbits. You're the sun, burning so brightly. And I'm just some distant planet trying to stay in your light. I know I'm not the man people admire at parties, but I'm here. I show up. For you. For Lucas. Every day. Do you even see me anymore? I want to believe we can find our way back. But I'm scared I already lost you. Ethan. He stared at it for a long time. Then, without regret, he tore the letter in half. Not out of anger, but because the man who had written it no longer existed. Across town, Vanessa stared at the ceiling in her motel room. She had replayed her mistakes 1,000 times, each one like a broken record etched into her bones. But the part she couldn't reconcile wasn't that Ethan had left her. It was that Lucas had, too. She thought children forgot, moved on, that Ethan had poisoned him. But deep down, she knew better. She had walked away first. The next morning, Ethan packed Lucas's lunch and walked him to school. The boy held his hand tighter than usual. Dad, he said, are we going to be okay? Ethan looked at him. We already are. Lucas smiled, the kind of smile only a child who finally feels safe can give. And Ethan, for the first time in years, believed it. Chapter 7. When a Son Stops Waiting. The school cafeteria buzzed with the noise of lunchtime chatter and crinkling sandwich wrappers. Lucas sat at the end of a long table, opening his lunchbox to find a sticky note from Ethan tucked beside his sandwich. Good luck on your spelling quiz. You've got this, champ. Dad. He smiled. Across the table, his friend Jonah leaned over. Your dad leaves you notes? Yeah, Lucas said as if it were obvious. Cool. Mine just gives me Lunchables. Lucas laughed, then glanced toward the entrance again, a habit he hadn't yet broken. Even though he knew his mom wasn't coming. That Friday was Parent Appreciation Day at school, an annual event where students could bring a parent or a guardian for classroom activities, art projects, and a small performance at the end. The front lobby was filled with fathers in polos, mothers in scrubs or office wear, and grandparents with canes and hopeful eyes. Ethan had taken the day off from BrightSeed. He wore a soft navy sweater Lucas liked and brought a homemade batch of brownies for the class. They disappeared in 15 minutes. "Your dad's like the best," one of Lucas's classmates whispered. "He helped me fix my volcano." Lucas grinned. "Yeah, he's kinda awesome." After the school play, in which Lucas played the role of a brave tree who didn't fall in a storm, Ethan wrapped his arm around his son's shoulder. "You were amazing. I didn't forget any lines. You're a natural." As they walked out of the auditorium, Ethan noticed something. Vanessa was standing outside the gate, behind the chain-link fence, holding a bouquet of flowers. She hadn't signed up, hadn't come in, hadn't even texted, just stood there, watching. Lucas slowed. Ethan felt the boy's grip tighten around his hand. Vanessa waved. "Lucas. Sweetheart. I made it." Lucas didn't let go of his father's hand. Ethan crouched beside him. "It's okay if you want to go say hi." Lucas shook his head. "She said she'd be here last year too," he whispered. "She never came." Ethan looked toward Vanessa. Her makeup was perfect, but her eyes looked hollow. He stood, took a breath, and walked with Lucas to the car. Vanessa didn't follow. She just stood there, holding flowers meant for a child who had already let go. That night, Vanessa called. Ethan answered. "Why didn't you tell me about the school thing?" "I didn't think you'd come. I was there. You weren't in there." She paused. "He didn't even want to speak to me." "He's tired, Vanessa," Ethan said gently. He stopped waiting for promises. "You think I'm a bad mother. I think you made a lot of choices." And so did he. The silence stretched. Then Vanessa asked, "Does he ever talk about me?" Ethan considered this. Not with anger. Just like someone he used to know. Her breath caught. "I want to fix it." Then start by showing up. And not just with flowers. The next day, Lucas asked Ethan a question over breakfast. "Do moms come back? I mean, if they change." Ethan looked at him for a long moment. "Sometimes," he said. "But it takes time. And it has to be real." Lucas thought about it, chewing slowly. "Okay," he said. "Then I'll wait a little longer." But only a little. Chapter 8. The Man She Forgot to Believe in. The local tech fair was bustling with early-stage startups, investors in business casual, and curious parents dragging children through rows of booths lit with LEDs and dreams. BrightSeed's booth was modest, a clean white backdrop, a table with tablets running demos, and a banner that read, BrightSeed Learning, for the kids who need a different kind of classroom. Ethan stood behind the table, sleeves rolled, hair slightly windblown. Lucas wore a miniature BrightSeed t-shirt, handing out stickers shaped like little balloons. They didn't know Vanessa was watching from across the hall. She hadn't meant to come. She had seen the event advertised on a community board near her motel. She told herself it was coincidence. Curiosity. But the truth was simpler. She missed them. And now, as she watched Ethan speak with a small crowd, calm, intelligent, warm, she barely recognized him. This was not the man who once waited on her in the foyer with lukewarm dinner and patient silence. This man was confident, admired, respected. This man had grown in the space she abandoned. Zoe, the lead designer, nudged Ethan. 3 angel investors asked for your pitch deck. One's from Boston. Ethan smiled. That's incredible. Also, she whispered, there's a woman staring at you from behind the ice cream truck. He turned. Vanessa didn't flinch. Their eyes met across the crowd, a strange, heavy pause in the middle of the buzz. Ethan gave her a small nod. Civil, kind, unshaken. She stepped forward. Lucas, spotting her, immediately dropped the stickers and reached for Ethan's side. Ethan rested a hand on his son's back. Hey, Vanessa said, her voice uncertain. Hi, Ethan replied. I didn't know. This was your thing. It is. Vanessa looked around at the tablets, the children, the staff in matching shirts. It's really impressive. Thank you. She hesitated. Do you have a minute? Ethan looked at Lucas. Lucas shook his head and whispered, I want to go. Ethan turned back to her. Not right now. Vanessa's eyes dropped. I understand. She knelt and looked at Lucas. You were amazing in your play. Even from the fence, I could tell. Lucas didn't reply. And then she said something she hadn't said in years. I'm sorry. For not showing up. For all of it. Ethan felt Lucas grip his hand tighter, not in fear, but in processing. Vanessa stood. I'll leave you be. I just wanted to see you both doing well. And this time, she meant it. That evening, Ethan and Lucas sat on their tiny balcony eating takeout noodles. The sky was streaked with coral light, and the city glowed below. Lucas slurped a noodle, then asked, Did you see her face? I did. She looked not mean, just empty. Ethan nodded. She's learning. Will we see her again? Maybe. Lucas poked his tofu thoughtfully. Do you think she ever believed in you? Ethan took a breath. Maybe once. But I think I had to believe in myself first. Lucas nodded like he understood more than any 8-year-old should. Then he said, I'm glad you didn't wait for her to notice. Ethan smiled. So am I. Chapter 9. The night the lights stayed on. The power had gone out in half the city. A late fall storm swept through Charlotte just after 6 p.m., ripping tree limbs onto power lines and turning blocks into pockets of darkness. Streetlights flickered. Phones buzzed with outage alerts. But in the small 2-bedroom apartment Ethan and Lucas now called home, the lights stayed on. Not because they were spared, but because Ethan had prepared. He lit 3 emergency lanterns, stacked flashlights near the corners of each room, and pulled out the backup charging bank he kept under the kitchen sink. Lucas, now used to life shifting without warning, simply sat cross-legged on the living room rug. So, what do we do when the world goes dark? He asked. Ethan smiled and knelt beside him. We make our own light. He handed Lucas a lantern and opened a drawer full of board games and puzzles. Tonight, there would be no screens. No business calls. No distractions. Just the quiet glow of safety and presence. Meanwhile, across town, Vanessa sat in her motel room, watching the shadows on the wall twitch every time a car passed. The power had gone out there too, and no one had told her. Her phone was at 12%. She had no candles, no flashlight, only silence and regret. She thought of Ethan again, the steady way he had stood behind that booth. The way Lucas tucked himself into his side, like they were one body, one soul. She wondered if Ethan had power. Of course he did. He had always found ways to keep the lights on even when she had turned them off. Back in the apartment, Ethan and Lucas built a spaceship out of Legos by lantern light. This one's for kids with asthma, Lucas said, placing a transparent blue piece on top. They can fly into clean air. Brilliant, Ethan said. We'll call it the Breed Star. Lucas giggled. Then suddenly he said, Dad, do you think Mom misses us? Ethan thought for a moment before answering. I think she misses what she lost. But I'm not sure she knows how to hold on to something when she has it. Lucas nodded. I used to think if I did enough, she'd stay, the boy admitted. Like if I got good grades or didn't cry. Ethan swallowed the lump in his throat. You never had to earn love, Lucas. Not from me. Not from her. You deserve it just by being you. Lucas looked up at him. That's why I'm staying with you. Ethan hugged him close. I'm glad you are. That night, while Lucas slept under a blanket of stars projected from a small nightlight, Ethan sat at his desk, looking over an email from Henry Lynn. Subject: Series A interest. Ethan, 3 firms want meetings next week. They saw the demo video and are impressed. I think we're going big. He let the email sit there, unsent, before forwarding it to his lawyer with a simple note. Please include this in the custody file. It may help. Ethan wasn't trying to win a battle. He was trying to build a life. At 1:03 a.m., Vanessa sent a message she never thought she'd type. "If I wanted to learn how to be a better mom, would you help me?" Ethan stared at the screen, rereading the message twice. It wasn't the kind of thing you answer in the dark. Not immediately. Not when it still hurt. So he let it sit, and went asleep with the lights still on. Chapter 10. Paper Planes and Exit Signs. Saturday mornings had become a ritual for Ethan and Lucas. Not something grand, but something real. They'd start with cinnamon waffles from the corner bakery, then walk to the park with a thermos of hot cocoa and a bag of paper to fold origami. It had started as a breathing exercise, something to calm Lucas's nerves during asthma flare-ups. But now it was something more, a father teaching a son how to build things that fly. "Today, I want to make a dragon," Lucas declared, spreading out a sheet of bright red paper. "You got it," Ethan said, sipping his cocoa. "But only if I get to make a stealth jet." They sat under an oak tree speckled with gold leaves, quietly folding and creasing, the world slowing to their rhythm. Across town, Vanessa stood in front of a nondescript building with an old metal sign, Charlotte Family Counseling Services. She stared at the door for nearly 20 minutes before finally walking in. "I'd like to schedule an appointment," she told the woman at the front desk. "For couples or individual therapy," the receptionist asked gently. "Individual," Vanessa replied, then added, "and parenting." Back at the park, Ethan and Lucas launched their creations into the wind. The red dragon dipped, recovered, then soared. Lucas whooped with joy. "Did you see that? It almost looped." Ethan nodded, watching the plane twist through the air. "You gave it good balance. That's what matters." Lucas grinned. "What if it flies too far? Then we build another." Lucas stopped, thoughtful. "Is that what you did? After Mom?" Ethan crouched beside him. "Something like that. I didn't want to at first. I thought the first plane was supposed to last forever. But it crashed." "No," Ethan said. "It just flew in a different direction." That night, Vanessa sat in her motel room, flipping through a parenting workbook her counselor had recommended. One page asked her to describe a memory that made her feel loved as a child. She couldn't think of one. She tried again. Still blank. Her fingers gripped the pen tighter. Was this why she couldn't love Lucas the way he needed? Was this why she confused control with care? She looked at the worksheet and wrote one word in the blank space. "Try." She underlined it. Then she picked up her phone, hesitated, and typed. "Lucas, I don't know if you'll want to see me, but I'm learning, and I hope someday you'll see that I didn't stop trying. Love, Mom." She didn't hit send. But for once, she didn't delete it either. 2 days later, Vanessa stood quietly at the back of Lucas's school during dismissal. Not to be seen, just to observe. Ethan noticed her from across the parking lot. He gave her a small nod. Not of approval. Not of forgiveness. But acknowledgement. She didn't walk over. Didn't push. Didn't beg. She watched Lucas come running into Ethan's arms, heard his laughter echo through the trees, and felt something shift in her chest. Not jealousy. Not grief. Just humility. That night, Ethan tucked Lucas into bed. The boy clutched a folded paper plane under his pillow, the red dragon from the park. "Dad," he whispered, "do you think people can change?" Ethan brushed his hair back. "I think people can grow." Lucas nodded. "Then I hope Mom does." "Me too." And outside the window, on the sill where Ethan once left love notes that went unread, a new paper plane sat folded. Not to be flown, but to be kept. Because even when people take different exits, they sometimes leave pieces of themselves behind. Chapter 11. The First Real Invite. The invitation was handwritten on a folded sheet of construction paper, taped awkwardly with glitter stickers and a crooked drawing of a balloon. "To Dad's demo day, everyone's welcome. I'll be wearing my BrightSeed shirt. Come if you want. Lucas." Ethan found it on the kitchen table Saturday morning, the ink still smudged in places. Lucas had gone to bed without saying much, but now Ethan understood why. It wasn't a school event. It wasn't something public or compulsory. It was something Lucas had chosen to create, an idea he'd whispered about for weeks, secretly planning with Zoe and Omar at the office. Dad should show his app to other kids. Like a show and tell but cooler, Lucas had said. We'll invite everyone. And now, the invite sat between Ethan's coffee mug and the bills. But it wasn't meant for him. There were 4 identical invitations, Lucas had explained. One for Zoe, one for Omar, one for their building's janitor, Mr. Carl, who always gave him extra pencils, and one for her, Vanessa. Ethan hesitated outside the motel. It was the first time he had come here, not to argue, not to accuse, but simply to deliver something. When Vanessa opened the door, she looked different. Not because of what she wore, faded jeans and an old sweater, but because she didn't seem to be hiding behind anything anymore. Her makeup was minimal. Her eyes tired, but alert. "Hi," she said cautiously. "Hi." He handed her the folded paper. She opened it, eyes scanning the scrawled letters and crooked hearts. "I wasn't sure if he would," she started, then stopped. "Is he?" Ethan nodded. "He wrote it himself. He wants you there." She looked up at him, as if afraid to hope. "But only if you come as you," Ethan added gently. Not the Vanessa in heels and press releases. Just his mom. Vanessa swallowed hard and nodded. "I'll be there." Monday came. The BrightSeed office had been transformed into a colorful chaos of folding chairs, balloons, tablets on display stands, and homemade decorations Lucas had begged to hang himself. A sign on the whiteboard read, "BrightSeed Kids Day. See the world we're building. P.S. There's juice boxes." Parents, neighbors, and curious locals filtered in slowly, greeted by Zoe and Omar like honored guests. Lucas buzzed with energy, darting from screen to screen, demonstrating how the asthma tracker worked and showing kids how to launch the BreatheStar spaceship in-game. Ethan tried to stay in the background. This was his son's moment more than his. And then, at 11:34 a.m., Vanessa walked in. Not late, not overdressed. She wore jeans, clean sneakers, and a t-shirt that read, "I'm trying my best," in gentle cursive. Lucas froze. She saw him, her son, standing beside a table, holding a tablet and a marker. And she didn't rush, didn't cry. She simply walked over and said, "Hi, buddy." Lucas blinked. "You came." She knelt to eye level. "I'm really proud of you. This is amazing." He hesitated, then handed her the marker. "Want to play the game?" She took it like it was something precious. "I'd love to." Ethan stood across the room, watching. For the first time in years, Vanessa didn't look like a CEO or a woman who had everything to prove. She looked like a mother. And Lucas, still guarded, still cautious, looked like a child who had waited for this moment longer than he realized. Zoe leaned over and whispered, "Is that her?" Ethan nodded. "Yeah, she's trying." He smiled. "So is he." That afternoon, after the crowd had thinned and the cupcakes were mostly gone, Lucas handed Ethan a drawing, 2 stick figures beside a balloon with the words Team Dad scrawled in bright blue crayon. But just beneath it, he'd drawn a 3rd figure, standing a little farther away, but smiling. And beside her, the words, "Maybe Mom." Ethan held the drawing like a promise. Not of healing. Not yet. But of possibility. Chapter 12, An Empty Chair and a Full Room. 3 weeks after BrightSeed's Kids Demo Day, Ethan found himself standing in the lobby of Charlotte Tech Connect, the largest regional innovation conference of the year. His name badge read, Ethan Morgan, founder, BrightSeed Learning, helping parents help kids thrive. The room buzzed with industry energy, entrepreneurs clutching tablets, developers swapping QR codes, investors scanning pitches with strategic smiles. The air smelled like ambition and expensive coffee. But Ethan wasn't thinking about any of that. He was thinking about the chair. He had requested it specifically, one extra seat on stage, beside the demo podium, not for theatrics, not for PR. For Lucas. Lucas wasn't just the reason BrightSeed existed, he was its compass. Its why. And when it came time for Ethan's keynote, the boy in the team dad hoodie walked proudly onto the stage and took the empty chair, waving at the crowd like it was a school talent show. The room melted. Vanessa wasn't there. Ethan had told her about the keynote, hadn't invited her directly, but hadn't hidden it either. He had left the choice in her hands. She had stayed silent. He had expected that. But after the keynote, as Ethan wrapped up handshakes and interviews, his phone buzzed with a photo. Lucas had received it too. It was a picture of an empty couch with a caption. "I didn't know how to sit in that room today, but I'm sitting in this one. And I watched it all. You were both brilliant, Mom." Ethan showed it to Lucas. The boy stared at it for a moment. Unreadable. Then he nodded. Okay, that's a good start. That night, the conference organizers hosted a small dinner for speakers and sponsors. Ethan wore a navy jacket Zoe insisted he borrow. He didn't feel like a startup CEO, but no one questioned it anymore. They talked funding, expansion, even overseas pilot programs. He smiled, nodded, responded with clarity. But part of his mind drifted to that empty chair again. The one that wasn't on stage. The one at home. Back at the apartment, Lucas was with Mr. Carl, playing Uno. Ethan came home to find a note on the fridge. Won 4 out of 6 rounds. Mr. Carl let me cheat once. He said don't tell you. Oops. Ethan laughed, then sat down with a pen and pad. Not for code. Not for strategy. For Lucas's custody hearing, scheduled in 2 weeks. Though Ethan had full physical custody, the hearing would determine legal permanence. The judge would want proof of environment. Routine, emotional stability, letters, statements. Zoe had already written one. So had Lucas's pediatrician. But Ethan didn't want this to be a war against Vanessa. He didn't want to destroy her. He wanted to prove Lucas had a home. And if Vanessa wanted to earn her way back into his life, slowly, honestly, that door could remain open. But not without boundaries. Not without truth. 2 nights later, Vanessa emailed Ethan something unexpected. Subject: for the judge. If the court needs a statement from me, I'm ready to tell them the truth. You're the better parent. You always were. I still hope to become one too. But Lucas belongs with you. Until I'm someone he can count on again. Thank you for never turning him against me even when I deserved it. Vanessa. Ethan stared at the screen. It wasn't a surrender. It was an offering. A kind of grace he didn't expect, and maybe, deep down, still hoped for. He didn't reply immediately. But he printed it, folded it, and placed it in the same folder as Lucas's birth certificate. The next morning, Lucas asked if they could build a second chair on the BrightSeed stage, one for visiting guests. Like who? Ethan asked. Lucas shrugged. Just in case Mom keeps trying. Ethan smiled. Then we'll make room. Chapter 13. What the custody judge saw. The courtroom was colder than Ethan expected, not physically, but in its energy. The walls were beige, the air stale. The fluorescent lights buzzing like old secrets. He sat at the front with his attorney, a steady woman named Carla Winters, known for her calm demeanor and razor-sharp preparation. Vanessa sat 2 rows behind, alone. There was no jury, no dramatic objections, no raised voices. Just a family court judge, a folder of paperwork, and the future of an 8-year-old boy hanging between silence and signatures. Lucas stayed home with Zoe, building Lego dragons and waiting for a phone call. Judge Marla Henson was a woman in her 60s with graying hair pulled into a bun, thick glasses, and eyes that missed nothing. She reviewed the files in silence for several long minutes. Then she looked up at Ethan. Mr. Morgan, this court has received letters from your child's teacher, pediatrician, neighbors, and even from the founder of a startup accelerator program. It's clear you've built not just a business, but a stable home environment. Ethan nodded quietly. The judge turned to Vanessa. Ms. Morgan, your letter was unorthodox. Vanessa stiffened. I understand. You're not contesting custody? No, Your Honor. You're waiving rights to joint legal custody? Yes. And why is that? Vanessa took a slow breath. Because I hurt my son. Not physically, but emotionally. I made him feel abandoned. I gave him reasons to stop trusting me. And until I earn that trust back, if I ever do, I don't deserve to share custody. The courtroom was silent. Judge Henson narrowed her eyes. Do you want visitation? I'd like to, but only if Lucas wants it. Supervised or unsupervised? Supervised, Vanessa said. By someone he's comfortable with. The judge tapped her pen. Then she looked back at Ethan. Do you agree to that arrangement, Mr. Morgan? I do. Judge Henson nodded. I've been on this bench for 22 years. It's not often I see a parent who fails take full accountability. And it's rarer still to see the other parent hold space for them to return. She signed the paperwork. Full legal and physical custody granted to Mr. Ethan Morgan. Supervised visitation rights granted to Ms. Vanessa Morgan at the child's discretion. She paused. And one more thing. Both turned their eyes to her. Lucas is a lucky boy. Not because of what you've built, Mr. Morgan, though that's impressive, but because when you were abandoned, you didn't teach him to do the same. You taught him how to stand up. Then she stood. Case closed. Outside, Vanessa stood on the courthouse steps, arms folded. Ethan emerged minutes later, the weight of the ruling still settling over him. It didn't feel like triumph. It felt like peace. Vanessa approached. Thank you, she said. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. You didn't have to let me speak. I didn't do it for you, Ethan said. I did it for Lucas. She nodded, biting her lip. Can I ask you something? She said. Not as co-parents. Just as people. Go ahead. Do you think I'm capable of change? Ethan looked at her, really looked at her. Not with bitterness. Not with old wounds. Just honesty. I think you're capable of choosing it. She smiled faintly. That's fair. Then she turned to go, pausing halfway down the steps. I've signed up for community parenting classes, she said without looking back. The kind for people who want to learn how not to repeat what raised them. Ethan felt something shift in his chest. Not hope, not forgiveness, but respect. That evening, Lucas built a new Lego model, 2 chairs side by side, with a small paper sign taped in front. Reserved for real grown-ups. Is this us? Ethan asked, pointing to the chairs. Lucas nodded. One's for you. The other's for whoever shows up when it matters. Ethan smiled, eyes stinging. I'll be there, he promised. I know, Lucas said. Chapter 14. A room with a light on. Vanessa didn't expect to cry in the parking lot of the Charlotte Public Library, but she did. Not out of despair, not anymore. The tears came from something quieter, the kind of ache that comes when you finally see all the doors you never opened. And all the ones still waiting, just slightly ajar. The parenting class had just ended. Her first real step. 5 strangers sat in a circle beside her earlier, each with their own shame, their own stories. And when she introduced herself, for the first time in years, she didn't lead with a job title. She had said, My name is Vanessa. I'm here because I want to become the kind of mom my son deserves. And nobody judged her. Not even herself. Across town, Ethan adjusted a new framed photo on the hallway wall. It showed Lucas at the BrightSeed demo day, standing in front of a whiteboard covered in marker scribbles and smiley faces. Above his head, in all caps, was Lucas's own handwriting. My dad built this. Zoe walked by with a bag of recyclables. That one gets prime real estate, huh? Front and center, Ethan replied, stepping back. Some things deserve to be seen every day. Like the person who made it, she said. Ethan turned. Me or him? Both. Zoe smiled. Then paused. You okay about the hearing? Yeah. Just processing. It didn't feel like a victory? It didn't have to. It felt like clarity. That evening, Ethan and Lucas curled up on the couch with a blanket, watching old animated movies. The kind with talking animals and predictable endings, the kind that made Ethan nostalgic for when the world felt simpler. During the credits, Lucas whispered, "Do you think she's really trying?" Ethan didn't pretend not to understand. Yes, he said. And I think trying matters more than being perfect. Lucas thought about that. Then maybe I'll let her come to my next art show. Ethan smiled. That's your choice. You get to decide who's in your front row. Meanwhile, Vanessa sat in her motel room, sorting through resumes and part-time job postings. She had sold the last of her jewelry to cover a month's rent. The walls were still bare. The air still smelled like distant lives. But on the small side table sat a photo, the only one she'd asked Ethan to print for her. Lucas, holding a paper airplane beside Ethan at the park. She didn't ask to be cropped in. She didn't need to be. But every night, she turned on the lamp beside it, a small, steady light. She wasn't back in their lives. Not yet. But she'd leave that light on. In case the day ever came when her son walked back in. Chapter 15. The Boy with Two Balloons. It was family day at the community center, an open field filled with bounce houses, face painting, food trucks, and a small stage where local kids would perform songs or poems. BrightSeed was one of the sponsors this year, and Lucas was scheduled to read a short story he wrote for school. The Balloon That Didn't Pop. Ethan stood near the stage, organizing the handouts and educational flyers with Zoe and Omar, who were now family in their own right. Lucas, dressed in a red hoodie and sneakers, too new to stay clean, paced back and forth with a folded paper in his hand. I'm nervous, he muttered, chewing the corner of his lip. You don't have to be perfect, Ethan reminded him. Just real. Lucas nodded slowly. Can I do one thing weird? Ethan raised an eyebrow. Define weird. I want to bring 2 balloons on stage with me. One for each parent. Ethan paused, then smiled. That's not weird. That's brave. The crowd gathered as Lucas was introduced. He stepped up onto the wooden stage, 2 helium balloons floating gently behind him, one blue, one silver. He cleared his throat, paper trembling slightly in his small hands. This is my story. It's called The Balloon That Didn't Pop. It's about a balloon that got dropped and bumped and nearly floated away, but it didn't. Because someone caught the string. Someone who held on. And later, someone else, someone who didn't catch it the first time, came back. They said sorry. They asked if they could hold the balloon too. Lucas looked at the crowd. It didn't pop. It forgave. He held up the blue balloon. This one's for my dad. He never let go. Then he lifted the silver balloon. And this one is for the person trying to come back. He didn't name her. He didn't have to. Vanessa stood at the edge of the crowd, hands clenched at her sides, tears streaming down her cheeks, not from guilt, but from something new. Hope. After the reading, kids swarmed the bounce house and the cotton candy stand. Ethan sat with Lucas at a shaded picnic table, sipping lemonade from plastic cups. That was a pretty incredible story, Ethan said. Lucas beamed. I wrote it on the bus. Ethan laughed. You're impossible. Lucas leaned in. Did you see if she was here? I did. Lucas nodded. Okay. Then he asked, do you think balloons can forgive people? Ethan looked up at the sky, the blue and the silver balloon now drifting peacefully together, side by side. I think they already did. That evening, Vanessa waited at the motel with a folded chair and a small envelope in her lap. Inside it was a drawing, Lucas's, from weeks ago, of 3 stick figures under a tree. It used to only be 2. Now, the third had been drawn closer. Still a little smaller. Still a little apart, but closer. She didn't knock on any doors that night. She just kept the chair ready and the porch light on. Chapter 16. The Visit. The first visit wasn't planned. It wasn't supervised. It wasn't formal. It wasn't anything the court had written down or prepared for. It just happened. Vanessa was walking past the bookstore downtown, her eyes hidden behind sunglasses, trying to convince herself she wasn't looking for them, and then she saw them. Ethan and Lucas, sitting on the patio of a tiny cafe next door, sharing a slice of strawberry shortcake and laughing over a book. Lucas looked older, taller, his hair longer, his smile wider. She stood across the street for a long moment. Then Lucas turned and saw her and waved. Not big, not loud, but not small either. Vanessa crossed the street slowly, each step unsure. When she reached them, she removed her sunglasses like a surrender. "Hi," she said softly. Lucas looked to Ethan. Ethan nodded. "You want to join us?" Lucas asked. Her breath caught. "Yes," she said. "I'd really like that." They talked about simple things. School. Cupcakes. A lizard Lucas had seen behind the garbage bins and named Professor Slippy. Vanessa didn't bring up the past. She didn't apologize again. She didn't promise anything. She just showed up. She listened. She laughed. And when Lucas leaned over to show her the book he was reading, Ethan saw it, the tiniest shift in Lucas's posture. Trust beginning again. Later, as Vanessa stood to leave, Lucas held out the empty cardboard cupcake box. "Can you throw this away for me?" It wasn't about trash. It was a gesture. A way of saying, "I'll let you carry something small. Let's start there." She smiled. "Sure thing, buddy." That night, Ethan sat at his desk, scrolling through app feedback. BrightSeed's first paid version had launched quietly the week before, and downloads were steadily climbing. Parents from Ohio, Colorado, even Canada had begun to send messages. One mother wrote, "I've never seen my son willingly use a breathing exercise until now. He asks to play his calm game every night before bed. Thank you." Ethan exhaled, rubbed his eyes, and clicked save. Then he opened his notes. At the top of a fresh page, he typed, Q1, add new module, kids of divorced/separated parents. Focus. Emotional validation plus daily routines. Working title, The Light Between Us. Across town, Vanessa sat on the edge of her twin bed, reading the same book Lucas had shown her, borrowed from the library that afternoon. She didn't read fast. She didn't always understand the metaphors, but she read every word, because he had loved it, and that was reason enough. At 8:42 p.m., Ethan received a short text from her. "Thank you for today. It meant more than you know." He stared at it, then typed, "I do know, and you're welcome." He noticed you didn't try to fix anything. That's why it worked. She didn't respond, but she didn't need to. Some lights don't flicker loudly. They just stay on. Chapter 17. The Family Project. The school bulletin board was covered in glitter, paper leaves, and a bold red sign that read, Family Project, create something that represents who you are together. Due, 2 weeks. Presentations, open to guests. Lucas read the assignment twice, standing next to Ethan in the school hallway. "Can we do it?" he asked. "You and me." Ethan smiled. "Of course. What do you want to make?" Lucas tapped his chin. "I don't know yet. Something with light." That night at dinner, Lucas brought it up again. He had set the table, 2 forks, 2 napkins, and in the center, a mason jar filled with glow sticks cracked just before serving. "For ambience," he said proudly. Ethan chuckled. "You're serious about the light theme." "Because we used to be dark," Lucas said matter-of-factly. "Now we're not." Ethan paused. "What would you think about inviting your mom to help?" Lucas looked at him carefully. "She doesn't have to finish it. But maybe she could help us start." Ethan nodded. It's your project. It should feel right to you. Lucas thought for a long moment, then said, okay. One part. That Saturday, Vanessa stood outside Ethan's apartment, nervously holding a sketch pad and a roll of LED string lights she had found at a discount store. She wore the same hoodie she used for class, the one that said, I'm trying my best. When Lucas opened the door, he blinked at the lights. You brought supplies? I did, she said, trying not to sound too hopeful. He nodded. Okay, you can help with the roof. Vanessa blinked. The roof. Ethan grinned from behind him. He's building a house out of recycled cardboard. One room for each part of our family. I get the roof, Vanessa whispered, almost to herself. It wasn't nothing. It was foundation work, in reverse. For 2 hours, they worked together. Lucas designed each room with different symbols, a bedroom with paper stars to represent dreams, a kitchen with cutout spoons for care, a hallway with footprints leading in both directions. In the center, a switch that powered LED lights through the walls. Vanessa carefully wove the string lights along the cardboard roofline. Why lights? She asked softly. Lucas answered without looking up. Because we used to be hard to see. Then he added, now we're easier. When the model was done, Vanessa stepped back, hands covered in glue and specks of glitter. It's beautiful, she said. Lucas didn't speak, but he didn't disagree. And when she left that afternoon, he handed her a folded paper. Not a drawing, a schedule. Family project presentation, Thursday at 4 p.m. Location, room 12B. Guests welcome. Vanessa looked at Ethan. Does this mean? It means he wants you there, Ethan said. Don't miss it. She held the paper like something fragile, and promised herself she wouldn't. That night, Lucas sat beside Ethan on the couch, holding the model gently in his lap. I think we made something good, he said. Ethan nodded. We always do. Then Lucas whispered. She didn't talk too much. She just helped. And Lucas smiled faintly. That's how I knew it was real. Chapter 18, Room 12B. Room 12B smelled like crayons and pencil shavings. The walls were lined with crooked posters. Teamwork makes the dream work, a weather chart, a calendar of birthdays. But today, the desks had been pushed aside and a row of folding tables had been set up for Family Project Day. Each student would present something they made with their family, a painting, a diorama, a scrapbook, a song. Some parents came in matching shirts. Others held up iPads to record every second. Laughter echoed between the glitter and glue. Ethan and Lucas arrived early. Their cardboard house sat proudly on the corner table, string lights carefully woven, glowing softly from within. I checked the batteries, Lucas whispered. We're good. Ethan gave him a high five. Then Lucas looked at the door. She wasn't there. Yet. Vanessa stood outside the school, hands sweating, breath shallow. She clutched the schedule Lucas had given her, the paper now soft from being folded and refolded. She'd passed by the school before, watched from the corner. But today was different. Today, she had to walk through the door. As she stepped inside, the hallway buzzed with motion, a janitor wheeling a cart, kids racing past with neon posters, a teacher ushering someone toward a restroom. And then she saw the sign. Room 12B, Family Presentations. Please come in quietly. She reached for the handle, paused, then opened it. Lucas saw her first. He didn't wave. He didn't run. But he didn't turn away either. He nudged Ethan and whispered, she came. Ethan nodded. She did. Vanessa hovered in the back row, not sitting, not recording, just watching. And when Lucas's name was called, he stepped forward, holding the model in both hands. My name is Lucas, he said. And this is our project. It's a house. Some parents chuckled gently. But it's not a real house, Lucas continued. It's a pretend one. Each room means something. He pointed. This is for my dad, who always stayed. This is for me because I'm still learning. And this, he pointed to the glowing rooftop, this is the light that helps us see each other better. He paused, and the roof was made by someone who's trying really hard to come back. The room went quiet. I gave her the roof, Lucas said, because I think people who break things should help fix them. Then he stepped down. No applause. Just silence. The kind that means everyone heard everything. After the event, Vanessa approached slowly. Lucas was packing up the house into a tote bag, careful not to damage the lights. I liked your story, she said. Thanks. I was proud. Lucas looked at her. You can say you're proud, he said. But you also have to show up for the next part. She nodded. I will. Good, he said, standing straighter. Then you can help carry it to the car. Vanessa blinked. You want me to help carry it? He nodded. Only the roof section. Ethan smiled quietly nearby. It wasn't trust. Not yet, but it was weight shared. And sometimes, that was the beginning. That evening, back at the apartment, the cardboard house sat on the table. Ethan switched on the lights again. Lucas stared at them for a moment, then whispered, the roof's still glowing. It will for a while, Ethan said. But not forever? No, Ethan said. But long enough. Lucas leaned against him. Then let's keep changing the batteries. Chapter 19. BrightSeed grows, and so does the boy. BrightSeed hit its first major milestone on a rainy Thursday in early spring. 100,000 downloads. Ethan sat alone in the office when the notification pinged, a soft chime from the analytics dashboard that simply said, Party Popper 100,000 installs reached. Top 3 in kids and family/educational apps, US region. He stared at the screen for a long moment. Not out of shock, out of stillness. Years ago, he'd stood in the same room, or one just like it, unsure if he was anything beyond a stay-at-home dad with a broken marriage and a tired heart. Now, he had built something. Not just code. Connection. Lucas barged in, his backpack bouncing against his side. Did you see? The number. Ethan turned, startled. How did you? Omar told me. Lucas said proudly. He said I'm officially the Chief Idea Officer. Ethan laughed. Did he now? Can we celebrate? We can. Lucas thought for a second. No cake. Cake is for birthdays. This needs grilled cheese and root beer. You got it, CIO. That evening, they sat on the fire escape of the apartment, the city lights twinkling like small fires below. A gentle mist hung in the air, but neither of them minded. Lucas held the BrightSeed app open on his tablet. They should have a new feature, he said between bites of sandwich. Like, for kids who feel angry but don't know why. Ethan nodded slowly. You think that's common? Lucas looked at him. I think it was me. Last year. Ethan's heart stilled. Then Lucas added, not anymore. The next day, Vanessa showed up with something unexpected, a binder. Neatly labeled, full of notes, ideas, and hand-drawn concepts. What's this? Ethan asked. I've been going to design workshops at the library, she said. I know I can't help you code, but maybe I can help the way it looks. Make it more accessible for kids like Lucas. Like I used to with my old clients. Ethan hesitated, then opened the binder. It wasn't perfect, but it was effort. Lucas asked if we could build a section for kids who feel angry and don't know why. He said. Vanessa's eyes softened. I'll start sketching tonight. Later that week, BrightSeed held its first live webinar, a free parenting Q&A. Ethan sat in front of the webcam. Lucas off-screen doodling on a sketch pad. Questions poured in. What do you do when your kid won't open up? How do you parent when you're barely holding it together? How do I stop being the villain in my own home? Ethan answered each one slowly. Honestly. He didn't quote studies. He didn't pretend to have formulas. He said, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to stay. If you've broken something, own it. Then rebuild in front of them. Let them see you do the hard thing. Kids forgive people who show up more than people who explain. At the end, someone asked, "How do you know if you're doing enough?" Ethan paused. Then he looked toward Lucas and said, "They'll tell you," with light in their eyes, or with silence, or with one small balloon. That night, Lucas taped something to the fridge. A hand-drawn graph with two labels. X-axis, time. Y-axis, trying. A red line labeled Mom slowly climbing. A green line labeled Dad staying steady near the top. At the bottom, in all caps, "Keep going, both of you." Chapter 20. The Light Between Us. The day started like any other cool breeze. Cereal on the table, mismatched socks on Lucas's feet. But something about the way the sun filtered through the kitchen window made Ethan pause. It felt like arrival. Not at a finish line, but at a place he had only ever seen on maps. A version of peace earned not by triumph, but by endurance. That afternoon, Lucas had a school showcase. Not an awards ceremony. Just an open gallery, projects, poems, paintings. Every student invited someone. Lucas invited both of them. "I want you guys to walk in together," he'd said. "Like a triangle." "A triangle?" Ethan asked. "Yeah, it's the strongest shape." At 3:58 p.m., they met outside the school. Vanessa wore a modest blouse and flats, her hair pulled back simply. She held a tote bag with extra markers and a folded copy of Lucas's project, just in case something fell off. Ethan wore his usual soft jacket and a BrightSeed button on his chest. Lucas saw them, waved wildly, and grinned. Then he reached for both their hands and walked between them. Inside room 17, his painting hung in the middle of the wall. A house with a glowing roof. Two tall trees standing beside it. One balloon between them. Above it, in thick crayon lines, "This is the light between us." That night, after Lucas went to bed, Ethan stood on the balcony, watching the city blink in and out of shadow. Vanessa joined him quietly, 2 mugs of tea in hand. They didn't talk about the past or the future. They just watched the sky. "There's a light out there that hasn't gone out," she said softly. "I know. I don't want to waste it this time," she added. "Not for his sake. For mine." Ethan nodded. "Then keep it lit." Down the hall, Lucas stirred in bed. He reached beneath his pillow and pulled out 2 folded paper balloons, one blue, one silver, and placed them on his nightstand beneath a tiny clip-on lamp. He clicked it on and whispered, "Still here." Outside, the wind passed gently between the branches. The porch lights on 2 separate homes flickered in quiet, synchronized glow. Not perfect, not whole, but together, even if only by a thread, even if only by light.